The conference room fell silent as Miranda Collins stood at the whiteboard, marker poised mid-air, explaining the quarterly projections to the marketing team. She was mid-sentence when her phone buzzed insistently on the table. Once, twice, 3 times. Her colleagues exchanged knowing glances. "Sorry," she muttered, reaching for it. The screen lit up with messages from her younger sister, Emily, each one more dramatic than the last. "Emergency. Need you tonight. Life or death." Miranda sighed. Emily's emergencies ranged from broken nails to actual crises with equal theatrical weight. Still, she was her sister. She typed back a quick response promising to call after the meeting. 2 hours later, Miranda sat in her modest apartment, nursing a cup of tea while Emily paced her living room like a caged tiger. "So you're telling me you signed me up for a blind date without asking?" Miranda said flatly. "It's not just any blind date," Emily protested, her hands gesturing wildly. "It's at that new Italian place downtown, Stellar. Do you know how hard it is to get a reservation there?" "That doesn't answer my question." Emily stopped pacing and sat down, her expression shifting to something resembling guilt. "Okay, look. There's this group from Brad's office, and they were all going, and Brad said there would be this guy who's supposedly successful or whatever, and I thought." "You thought you'd volunteer me as entertainment?" Miranda set down her tea harder than intended. I'm 34 years old. I don't need you playing matchmaker. You haven't been on a date in 2 years. I've been busy. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely." Even as she said it, Miranda knew it wasn't entirely true. The apartment felt emptier lately. The silence louder. Emily's face crumpled. "Please. I already told Brad's friends you'd come. If you don't show up, I'll look like an idiot. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? You get a free meal." That's how Miranda found herself the following Friday evening, standing outside Stellar in a black dress she'd panic-bought that afternoon, questioning every life choice that led to this moment. She could hear laughter from inside, young, carefree voices that made her feel ancient. When she entered, she spotted them immediately. A group of 20-somethings clustered around a table near the window, their energy filling the restaurant. Emily waved frantically, and Miranda made her way over, feeling every eye turn toward her. "Everyone, this is my sister, Miranda," Emily announced brightly. Too brightly. The table chorused hellos, but Miranda caught the smirks, the barely suppressed giggles. Her stomach sank. Something was wrong. "Your date's running late," Brad said, checking his phone. "But he should be here soon. Alexander something. Apparently, he's some big-shot CEO." More giggles. A blonde girl Miranda didn't recognize whispered something to her friend, and they both burst into laughter. "What's so funny?" Miranda asked, her voice cool. "Nothing," Emily said quickly. Too quickly. "Just excited for you." The lie was transparent. Miranda had worked in corporate environments long enough to recognize a setup when she saw one. She glanced around the table again, noting the phone's position just so, the way everyone kept glancing at the door then back at her. They were waiting for something. Waiting to laugh. She should leave. She should walk out right now and save herself the humiliation. But something stubborn in her refused to give them the satisfaction. Instead, she ordered a glass of wine and settled in, deciding that whoever this Alexander was, he was probably in on the joke too. 20 minutes later, the restaurant door opened, and Miranda felt the table's energy shift. A man entered, and the room seemed to reorganize itself around him. He was tall, perhaps in his early 40s, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples and a face that suggested he smiled rarely but meant it when he did. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, and there was something about the way he moved, purposeful, contained, that suggested power held carefully in check. He scanned the restaurant, his gaze landing on their table. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe calculation, before it smoothed into neutrality. "Alexander," Brad called out, standing. "Over here, man. We were starting to think you'd bail." The CEO approached, and Miranda noticed he wasn't smiling. He shook Brad's hand with perfunctory politeness, nodded to the others, and then his eyes met hers. "You must be Miranda," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "I apologize for being late." "It's fine," she replied, suddenly unsure. He didn't seem like someone who'd participate in a cruel joke. But then again, she'd been wrong about people before. "Actually," Alexander continued, still holding her gaze, "I'm glad you waited. I almost didn't come tonight." "Why did you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Curiosity." His lips quirked slightly. "And my daughter Emma insisted I needed to, and I quote, get a life before she goes to college, and I become one of those sad dads who text too much." A laugh escaped Miranda before she could catch it, genuine and surprised. Around the table, the atmosphere shifted. This wasn't going according to plan, whatever that plan was. They sat down, Alexander between Miranda and Brad, though he angled his chair slightly toward her. The waiter appeared, and Alexander ordered without looking at the menu, then raised an eyebrow at Miranda. "The lobster ravioli," she said. "And another glass of the Montepulciano." "Make that a bottle," Alexander told the waiter, then turned back to her. "If we're doing this, we might as well do it properly." Over the next hour, something unexpected happened. They talked. Really talked. Alexander told her about Emma, his 15-year-old daughter who wanted to be an environmental lawyer and regularly defeated him at chess. Miranda found herself sharing stories about her work as a data analyst, her love of true crime podcasts, her secret ambition to learn pottery. The table around them grew quieter, the jokes dying away. Emily kept trying to interject, to redirect the conversation, but Alexander smoothly steered it back to Miranda every time. "You're not what I expected," Miranda admitted, the wine making her honest. "What did you expect?" She gestured vaguely at the table. "Someone who'd be in on whatever joke this was supposed to be." Alexander's expression hardened, but not at her. He glanced around at the others, seeming to register for the first time the phones still positioned to capture, the expectant faces waiting for humiliation. "I see," he said quietly. Then louder, "Who arranged this?" The table fell silent. Brad shifted uncomfortably. "It was just supposed to be fun, man. No harm meant." "Fun for whom, exactly?" "Look, we thought." The blonde girl started. "You thought what?" "That two people in their 30s would be so desperate, so pathetic, that putting them together would be comedy gold." Alexander's voice never rose, but it cut through the restaurant like a blade. "Let me tell you what I see. I see a woman who's intelligent, funny, and kind enough to show up to something that was clearly designed to embarrass her. And I see a group of people who should be ashamed of themselves." Miranda felt her throat tighten. No one had defended her like that in years. Maybe ever. Alexander stood abruptly, then did something that made the entire restaurant freeze. He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, because of course, a CEO carried around expensive jewelry, opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring, and turned to Miranda. "Miranda Collins," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent restaurant. "I know we've only known each other for 90 minutes. I know this is absolutely insane. But I also know that I've had more genuine conversation with you tonight than I've had in years. I know that you're brilliant and brave, and that anyone who can't see that is a fool." He paused, and something warm entered his eyes. "I know this is actually my grandmother's ring that I carry because Emma made me promise to keep it safe until I found someone worthy of it. And I know I'm about to do something either incredibly romantic or get slapped with a restraining order." Miranda couldn't breathe. The entire restaurant was staring. Emily's mouth open. Brad looked like he might pass out. "What are you doing?" Miranda whispered. "Calling their bluff," Alexander said, just as quietly. Then louder. "Miranda, will you marry me?" The restaurant erupted in whispers. Phones came out, not from their table this time, but from other diners, capturing what they thought was a genuine proposal. Miranda looked at Alexander, really looked at him, and saw the challenge in his eyes. The question that wasn't really about marriage at all, but about whether she was willing to turn their cruelty into something else entirely. Whether she was brave enough to flip the script. "That depends," she said, standing to face him. "Are you going to insist on a spring wedding?" Because I'm more of a fall person. The corner of his mouth twitched. Fall it is. And I'm keeping my name. I'd expect nothing less. And your daughter has to approve. Already texted her. She says, and I quote, "OMG Dad, this is either really romantic or really unhinged, but I'm here for it."
Miranda laughed, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep inside.
She looked at the ring, at Alexander, at the stunned faces around the table. Then she held out her hand. "Then yes," she said.
"Alexander, whatever your last name is, he will marry you."
He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the restaurant exploded in applause. People they'd never met cheered. The waiter popped champagne. And at their table, Emily and her friends sat in shocked silence, their joke turned completely inside out. Later, standing outside the restaurant while they waited for their cars, Miranda turned to Alexander. "So what happens now?" "Now." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him all night.
"Now I suppose we go on a proper date."
Get to know each other without an audience. See if there's actually something here, or if we just got caught up in the moment. And if there's not, then we'll have one hell of a story. And I'll have finally done something that impresses Emma. He paused. Though between you and me, I have a feeling there might be something here. Miranda looked down at the ring on her finger, heavy and real and completely absurd.
"This is crazy."
Completely. I don't even know your last name.
Montgomery. Alexander Montgomery.
Miranda Collins Montgomery has a nice ring to it, she said, trying it out. Then quickly added, "Not that I'm actually taking your name. I told you I wasn't. You did. Though I notice you didn't say we couldn't hyphenate." Their cars arrived simultaneously. Before parting, Alexander took her hand, the one with the ring, and kissed it gently. "Thank you," he said, "for being brave enough to say yes. Thank you for being crazy enough to ask." As Miranda drove home, her phone exploded with messages. Emily was hysterical with apologies. Friends she hadn't heard from in months were demanding details. But she ignored them all, looking instead at the ring catching streetlight as she drove. She had no idea what would happen next. Maybe they'd go on a real date and discover they had nothing in common. Maybe this would become just a funny story she'd tell at parties. Or maybe, just maybe, sometimes the universe responded to cruelty with something unexpected and beautiful. Either way, she thought, she'd never let anyone make her the punchline again.